Chapter 17, A Most Alarming Tale. For a week, Pixie did not see the children because they had gone to the seaside. They gave him all kinds of advice before they went. "Now, you see that you keep an eye on the wishing chair for us, won't you?" said Peter. "And if it grows its wings, don't you go on adventures without us. And don't let Winks have the chair at all. I like Winks, and he's a good friend, but he's dreadfully naughty. I shouldn't be a bit surprised if he isn't sent back to Mr. Grimm's school again some day." "I know. I caught him practicing magic with my wand last night," said Pixie. "He was trying to change the teapot into a rabbit. Silly thing to do." "Yes, rather," said Molly. "You really can't pour tea out of a rabbit. Now, you be sure to keep an eye on Winks, Pixie. And don't sleep with the door or the window open at night in case the chair grows its wings when you're asleep and flies off by itself," said Peter. "Oh dear, it's so hot now," said poor Pixie. "It's dreadful to have to sleep with the doors and the windows shut. I've been tying the chair to my leg so that if it does try to fly off, it will tug at my leg and wake me up. Isn't that all right? I thought it was a good idea." "Well, that is a good idea," said Peter. "Well, so long as you remember to tie your leg and the chair's leg together at night, well, you can sleep with the door and the windows open. But be sure to watch that nobody slips in to steal the chair," said Molly. Pixie began to look very worried. "I'm beginning to feel that you both had better not go away," he said. "Anyway, don't I always look after the chair at night for you? Nothing's ever happened to it yet." The others laughed. "Oh, we're being awfully fussy, aren't we?" they said. "Goodbye, Pixie dear. A week will go by soon. Don't be too lonely. I expect that Winks will be popping in and out to see you." The children had a lovely week at the seaside, and they came back brown as berries. As soon as Mother would let them, they rushed down to the playroom to see Pixie. He wasn't there, and so they looked for a note, but there wasn't one. "Well, he's probably just gone out for a few minutes to see a friend," said Peter. "We'll hang up the seaweed that we brought back for him and tidy up the room." And so they spent a happy 10 minutes nailing up the long fronds of seaweed that they had brought back and tidying up their playroom, which seemed to have gotten very untidy while they had been away. "It's funny that Pixie hasn't kept it tidier than this," said Molly, pulling the rug straight and putting a chair upright. And then she suddenly gave a cry. "Peter, where is the wishing chair? It isn't here." Peter looked around, quite startled. "Well, fancy us not noticing that as soon as we came in. Where is it?" "I suppose Pixie's gone off in it," said Molly. "But he might have left a note. I suppose he's at his mother's." "He'll soon be back then," said Peter, going to the door and looking out. He knew that this was the day that we were coming home. But Pixie did not come, and by the time tea time came, the children felt rather worried. Surely Pixie would have been back to tea on the day that they came home. He always liked to spend every minute with them that he could, especially now that they had had to go to boarding school and leave him for months at a time. They had brought their tea down to the playroom. They were sitting having it rather solemnly when a small mischievous face looked around the door. It was Winks. "Edward, will you sit down so you can enjoy the story, please?" "Here, I'll help you. There we go. That's very nice. Come on, buddy." "I guess he'll take his time." "Hello," said Winks, but he did not smile. He looked very grave, and he walked in quietly. "Where's Pixie?" asked Molly at once. "Where's the wishing chair?" said Peter. "Well, an awful thing happened 2 nights ago," said Winks. "I hardly like to even tell you." Now this was most alarming. The children stared at Winks in dismay. "For goodness sake, tell us," said Molly. "Well," said Winks, "I was staying here with Pixie that night. I was to sleep on that rug on the floor with a cushion, and Pixie was to sleep on the sofa as usual. When we were tired, we got ready for bed." "Well, go on," said Peter impatiently. "I want to know what happened to Pixie." "Well, I went to sleep, said Winks, and I suppose that Pixie did too. I suddenly woke up to hear a terrible noise going on. Pixie shouting and yelling and furniture being upset and goodness knows what. I put on the light, and what do you think had happened? Why, you know that Pixie always ties a rope from the chair to his foot, don't you? Well, the chair had grown its wings that night, and we didn't wake up, and so it tried to fly out the door all by itself, and the rope pulled on Pixie's foot and woke him up, said Peter. Yes, the chair pulled him right off the sofa, said Winks. He must have landed with an awful bump on the floor, and I suppose he thought someone had pulled him off and there was an enemy attacking him, and so he was fighting the furniture and the rugs, and he was shouting and yelling, and all the time the chair was tugging at his foot, trying to fly off. Goodness, said Molly. Well, what happened in the end? Well, when I put the light on, I saw the chair struggling to get out the door, and it was dragging Pixie along, said Winks. And I ran to stop the chair, but it rose up into the air, dragged poor Pixie out into the garden, and it flew up into the sky. But what about Pixie? Asked Molly in a trembling voice. Oh, Molly, poor Pixie had to go too, hanging upside down by one foot, said Winks, blinking away tears. I couldn't do anything about it, although I did try to catch hold of Pixie, but he was too high up by that time. This is awful, said Molly. Whatever are we to do? Has the chair gone to his mother's, do you think? No, I thought of that, said Winks. I went the next day to see, but Pixie's mother said that she hadn't seen either Pixie or the chair, and she is very worried. But why didn't the chair go to Pixie's mother? Wondered Peter. Pixie would have been sure to yell out to it to go there. Well, I think the chair was frightened, said Winks. It didn't know that it had Pixie by the foot, you see, and it couldn't understand all the yelling and the struggling. It just shot off into the night, quite terrified. Oh, this is awfully bad news, said Molly. Both Pixie and the chair gone, and we don't know where. How can we find out? I don't know, said Winks, looking very tired. I've been all over the place, asking and asking. Poor Winks, said Molly. You do look very tired. I suppose you've been worried to death about Pixie. Oh, yes, I have, said Winks. You see, I've been teasing him rather a lot, and I hid his wand, and I made him quite cross, and I broke a cup, and now I feel awfully sorry I was such a nuisance to him. There are times when you are really not very good, Winks, said Peter sternly. You ought to be careful in case you get sent back to Mr. Grimm. I know, said Winks. The awful part is, even when we do find out, if ever we do, we haven't got the wishing chair to fly off in to rescue him, said Peter gloomily. Shall we go and ask Mr. Spells if he can help us? Said Molly suddenly. He's awfully clever. He might think of some way of finding out where Pixie has gone. Well, yes, that's a very good idea, said Peter. You've heard of Mr. Spells, haven't you, Winks? Shall we go straight away now? I think I remember the way. We have to go to the village of Pin first, and then we take the bus, and then we take a boat. Yes, said Winks, cheering up. I feel much better since I've talked to you. And so they set off. Down the garden they went, and through the gap in the hedge, into the field and across to find the dark patch of grass. It was still there. They all sat down in it, and Molly felt about for the little knob that got the magic going. She found it, and she pressed it, and down shot the ring of grass much too fast, and they all tumbled off into a heap below. Gracious, said Winks, you might have warned me what was going to happen. I almost died of fright when the earth fell away beneath me. Come on, said Peter. We have to go down this passage now, past all these doors. We really must find Mr. Spells as soon as possible. They went on down the twisting passage, which was still lighted clearly by some light nobody could see. Winks wanted to stop and read the names on each door. Dame Handy Pandy, he said. Where is she? And this name says Mr. Pigglepie. Oh, let's knock and see what he's like. Winks, come on, said Molly. We're in a hurry. Wait, said Winks. Look at this door. Look at the name. Hey, Molly, Peter, it says Mrs. Spells. Do you think she has anything to do with Mr. Spells? Let's find out. And he banged hard at the little green door. Rat-a-tat-tat. Oh, Winks, now what have you done? And when we read together again next, it will be Chapter 18, Mr. Spells' Mother. Someone is taking a nap.